Everyone says AI will replace jobs, but almost nobody asks another question. Is AI affecting men and women differently? We analyzed more than 250,000 students. The answer surprised us. Section 1, Formulating a Hypothesis. Welcome to this explainer. As we explore the sweeping economic shifts happening right now, we're going to put on our data analyst hats and look at a really curious trend we've been noticing in university majors. When we dive into recent college admission trends, a stark pattern jumps right out at you. Programs like electrical engineering, computer science, and anything semiconductor related, they are absolutely surging. And historically, these are fields heavily dominated by men. But on the flip side, foreign language, literature, and humanities departments are seeing a sharp decline. And traditionally, these fields have a much higher enrollment of women. Seeing this clear split sparked our main question. Could the massive labor market shifts caused by the generative AI revolution actually be disproportionately hitting female-dominated fields? Like, are we watching a structural change unfold that impacts one gender way more than the other? Section 2, Analyzing the Data. Now, it's incredibly easy to just grab a few cherry-picked examples to spin a narrative, but instead we wanted to see what a massive, reliable sample size could actually prove. So, we built a highly objective public data set using Ministry of Education records in Taiwan. We looked at 31 different universities, mixing top-tier and mid-tier schools to keep the economic sample perfectly balanced. Out of over 1,300 departments, we successfully matched 840 programs with their exact gender breakdown. This wasn't some tiny subjective poll. We looked at the hard data for over 129,000 male students and over 123,000 female students. That is more than 250,000 real people. Here's exactly how we crunched those numbers. We compared program popularity across two distinct four-year blocks, 2018 to 2021, and then 2022 to 2025. We're using popularity, meaning how hard it is to get admitted, because it acts as a really accurate real-time proxy for how the labor market values those future skills. Then, we calculated the rate of change for every single department and weighted it by the actual number of men and women enrolled in those specific programs. Section 3, The Surprising Results. And wow, when the math was finally done across all 840 departments, the contrast wasn't just some tiny statistical blip. It was a structural chasm. The data showed that the average labor market value for the fields men were entering dropped by about 3.1%. That's a noticeable dip for sure, which completely makes sense given the overall economic disruption we're seeing. But for women, the perceived labor market value plummeted by over 11%. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. The drop for women was roughly 3.5 times greater than the drop for men. In an economy that's supposedly shifting evenly toward the future, the penalty of this transition seems to be falling incredibly heavily on one side of the gender line. Section 4, Contextualizing the Gap. Really grasp why this massive disparity exists, we have to look closely at exactly what kind of work generative AI is replacing and what it's creating. It breaks down exactly like this. Generative AI is incredibly good at taking over translation, administrative tasks, basic content creation, and customer service. Those are the immediate, highly visible disruptions. But at the exact same time, building the underlying architecture of AI is creating explosive, totally unprecedented demand for semiconductors, algorithm design, and advanced engineering to actually power these systems. When you map those two forces, the jobs being automated away versus the jobs being aggressively boosted, onto historical demographics, the math becomes crystal clear. The roles AI is replacing first just so happen to be in fields traditionally occupied by a much higher proportion of women. Meanwhile, the hardware and advanced engineering sectors experiencing this massive boom have historically been occupied by men. This isn't about capability or innate value at all. It's just a cold structural reality of how the current job market's architecture is interacting with a brand new technology. Section 5, Research Limitations. Now, as rigorous analysts, we have to remain perfectly objective and anchor our narrative only in what the data can actually prove. We have to transparently address the limitations here. We have to be completely honest. AI is not the only factor at play. The global economy is incredibly complex. For instance, there's a massive independent boom in the semiconductor industry right now, driven heavily by international relations and global supply chain shifts. On top of that, Taiwan implemented major changes to its university admissions system starting around 2022, which totally altered how students pick their majors, adding some undeniable noise to our popularity metrics. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that while the correlation is incredibly strong, we cannot definitively point to generative AI as the single exclusive cause. It's undeniably a major catalyst, but it's part of a much larger, complex web of economic and policy influences. Still, we are looking at a powerful correlation that demands our attention, even if it is an absolute, isolated causation. Section 6. Rethinking our future. Which brings us to the ultimate point of this explainer. This research is absolutely not a value judgment on gender, nor is it a debate about who is better suited for the future. It is a stark, data-driven warning about structural economic shifts. We are watching a real-time realignment of human capital, and ignoring these numbers won't make the problem vanish. Pretending this technological disruption is a perfectly even playing field is just going to lead to massive societal costs down the line. So it leaves us with one critical question to ponder. If we are truly facing an unequal AI shock, how do we urgently adapt our educational policies, career planning, and government resources before this 3.5x disparity becomes a permanent scar on our economy? The data is right there on the table. How we respond to it is up to us.